Nearly 600,000 GM trucks and SUVs just got called back to the dealer, not for a loose trim piece or a software glitch, but for engines that can destroy themselves from the inside out. Cadillac Escalades, GMC Sierras, Yukons, Chevy Silverado, and Tahoes with 6.2-liter V8s are now under a recall that admits what owners have been feeling in their gut for years. These engines weren't tested for us, they were tested through us. And while the commercials talked about strength and heritage, the real test was happening in our driveways, our job sites, and on the side of the highway with a dead truck and a payment still due. If you own one of these trucks, you are not crazy for feeling uneasy. The numbers you're about to hear are the things GM hoped would stay buried in technical documents and lab reports. By the end of this video, you'll know whether your truck is standing on solid ground or sitting on top of a mechanical landmine, and exactly how to protect your wallet either way. The 2025 recall finally put a number on the problem. GM admitted that 597,630 full-size trucks and SUVs with the 6.2-liter L87 V8 could suffer sudden internal failure because of defects in critical parts like connecting rods and crankshafts. In plain language, parts deep in the engine can be out of spec just enough to start wearing themselves to death. One moment, everything feels normal. Next, the engine loses power, locks up, or throws warning lights you can't ignore. These aren't rare freak occurrences. They showed up often enough that regulators opened an investigation in early 2025, dug through complaints, and pushed until GM had to act. Look at the badge list, and you start to see why so many people are angry. This recall covers some of GM's most expensive, most hyped vehicles, 2021 through 2024. Cadillac Escalade and Escalade ESV, Chevy Silverado 1500, Suburban, and Tahoe, plus GMC Sierra, 1500 Yukon, and Yukon XL. Top trim trucks that can easily crest $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 out the door. All suddenly sharing one ugly headline. The V8 that might need a new heart before it ever sees 100,000 miles. Dealers were ordered to stop selling certain new trucks on the lot until inspections could be done. Owners started getting letters and app notifications telling them to bring their pride and joy in, so a technician could decide whether it lives on or gets an engine transplant. For some people, that was the first time they realized their dream truck might have been built on a bad batch of parts from day one. For others, it felt less like a recall and more like confirmation that the ticking, the shuddering, and the strange oil behavior they'd been told was normal never was. But this is where things get uncomfortable, because this recall isn't the beginning of GM's V8 trouble. It's the moment the story finally spilt out into public view. The real beginning sits years earlier, in engineering labs, service bulletins, and lawsuits that tried to warn everyone long before 2025. Inside GM, engineers have been wrestling with cylinder deactivation systems for a long time. Names change: active fuel management, dynamic fuel management. But the core idea is simple: shut down some cylinders under light load to save fuel. On paper, it's brilliant. On a spreadsheet, it hits all the right boxes: better miles per gallon, cleaner emissions, less carbon on a test cycle. But under real-world conditions, the same systems put enormous stress on tiny parts that never see the spotlight: hydraulic lifters, oil passages, cam lobes, bearings. Technical bulletins over the last decade quietly admitted what owners were hearing with their ears. Documents describe AFM lifters that collapse or stick, engines that start misfiring and ticking, fault codes like P0300 for random misfire. Instructions tell techs when to replace lifters, when to clear codes, and in some cases, how to reassure customers that certain noises are characteristic of normal operation. It's all very tidy on paper. Out in the real world, that characteristic sound is a truck owner wondering if they just heard their engine start counting down. Then you look at the legal side. Class action lawsuits filed on behalf of GM owners across the country accuse the company of knowingly selling vehicles with defective AFM and DFM valve train systems. These complaints describe trucks that suddenly lose power, hesitate, shudder, stall, or vibrate violently when the system acts up. They allege that GM didn't just miss the problem, they knew about it from internal data and sold the trucks anyway, while keeping quiet about just how widespread the defect might be. Meanwhile, the marketing never skipped a beat. The same engines were sold as smarter, cleaner, and more advanced. Commercials showed gleaming trucks towing through the mountains and hauling work trailers at sunrise. The brochure language talked about innovation. The internal service paperwork mentioned that lifters can collapse under normal driving conditions. And the people stuck between those two worlds were the owners who believed the promises and paid the price. If this were just a story about annoying noises and a couple of worn parts, it would be frustrating, but manageable. Unfortunately, it hits the one place modern truck owners can't afford a surprise: their finances. This is where loyalty turns into liability. Start with repairs. The days when a misfire and a tick meant a cheap tune-up are long gone. On a modern V8 with AFM or DFM, a collapsed lifter can require tearing deep into the engine. Even if the damage is caught early, a lifter and cam job can easily run into the thousands once you add labor, gaskets, fluids, and whatever else the shop finds along the way. If the engine has already chewed itself up from metal particles or oil starvation, you're looking at a replacement long block or full engine swap. $8,000, $10,000. Sometimes more, depending on where you live and what's available. Now add resale. Buyers might not follow every technical bulletin, but they absolutely follow headlines and word of mouth. When a recall hits hundreds of thousands of vehicles, it doesn't just live in the news cycle. It lives in auction lanes, dealer trade-in offers, and private party negotiations. Trucks with affected engines, especially those outside warranty, start getting treated like they're radioactive. Dealers make softer offers because they don't want to sit on a truck that might come back with a blown engine or a furious customer. Used car shoppers lowball because they've heard that those years have issues. That extra 10 or 15% haircut on value isn't just theoretical. It's the difference between having equity and being upside down when you try to trade out. It's the difference between rolling a little leftover balance into your next truck and dragging a 5-figure anchor along for the ride. So when you hear that GM is recalling hundreds of thousands of newer 6.2-liter trucks, while older AFM V8s are already buried in lawsuits and forum horror stories, the message is clear. The market knows something is wrong. And as usual, the first ones to feel it are everyday owners, not the executives who signed off on the design. So who exactly is in the crossfire right now? It's not just one model year or one corner of the lineup. It's two overlapping generations of risk. The first group is easy to identify. Owners of 2021 through 2024 GM full-size trucks and SUVs equipped with the 6.2-liter L87 V8. That's the engine at the center of the 2025 recall. If you drive a late-model Cadillac Escalade or Escalade ESV, a Chevrolet Silverado 1500, Suburban, Tahoe, or a GMC Sierra 1500 Yukon or Yukon XL with the 6.2 badge, your vehicle is literally named in recall documentation. The concern isn't some vague, maybe it runs rough. It's specific. Internal engine components like connecting rods and crankshafts may have manufacturing defects that can lead to sudden engine failure. Regulators have logged complaints of engine seizing, losing power, and in some cases contributing to crashes and fires. That's the official danger zone. The second group is the one most people forget to talk about, because it doesn't come in a single neat recall bulletin. These are the owners of earlier V8 trucks and SUVs, going back into the 2014 to 2020 range and beyond, running 5.3-liter, 6.0-liter, and 6.2-liter engines with AFM or DFM. These setups have been the subject of oil consumption technical bulletins, lifter failure service procedures, and multiple lawsuits. They include Silverados, Sierras, Tahoes, Yukons, and related models that predate the big 6.2-liter recall, but share the same design philosophy. Squeeze fuel savings out of complex valve train tricks and hope the parts keep up. Within those two groups, mileage becomes your unofficial risk meter. Under about 75,000 miles, a lot of trucks still behave like they're fine. You might hear the occasional tick at cold start, or notice the oil level creeping down more than you like, but nothing catastrophic yet. That's the watch zone, where a smart owner gets curious instead of complacent. Between 75,000 and 120,000 miles, you enter what many mechanics quietly call the danger zone. That's when lifter collapses, bearing failures, and oil-burning complaints start appearing more frequently, especially on trucks that see hard use or big temperature swings. Past 120,000 miles, you're in the burn zone. Trucks that make it there without major work can still fail, and the cost to repair them often rivals their remaining value. Climate throws gasoline on the fire, sometimes literally. In hot states, long summers bake oil, thin it out, and push already stressed lifters and bearings harder than they were ever meant to be pushed. In cold northern states, short trips and freezing starts cause fuel dilution and moisture buildup in the oil, which eats away at internal parts. You can baby the throttle and drive like there's an egg under your right foot, but the combination of design compromises and harsh reality doesn't care. If you're in one of those groups, your best defense isn't denial. It's information. To understand how a company with such a legendary V8 history ended up in this mess, you have to look at the tug of war inside the factory. On one side, engineers who live and breathe durability. On the other hand, accountants and regulators are demanding impressive fuel economy numbers without the cost of an all-new powertrain architecture. Cylinder deactivation systems were the compromise. AFM and DFM allow a V8 to run on fewer cylinders when you're just cruising or lightly loaded, saving fuel and trimming emissions on official tests. It looks great when regulators and marketing teams need a chart that goes up and to the right. But that magic trick depends on a chain of delicate events happening perfectly. Precise oil pressure, clean and debris-free passages, tight tolerances in lifters, and cams that don't see unexpected loads. Internal and external documents over the years have described exactly what happens when that chain breaks. AFM lifters that collapse or stick, leaving a cylinder dead. Misfires that trigger warning lights. Metalware that sends tiny particles into the oil system, where they start chewing on bearings, journals, and anything else they touch. Owners complain of ticking at idle, rough running, and oil loss. Techs open up engines and find lifters that look like they've lived a much harder life than the odometer suggests. By the mid-2000s, GM had choices to make. They could pour money into redesigning the problematic systems, accept short-term pain, and protect long-term trust. Or they could tweak around the edges and ride the design as long as possible. Bulletins from those years describing enhanced lifters, updated procedures, and revised oils tell you which path they chose. Minor changes instead of major surgery. Recommendations to swap to slightly different components, or adjust oil viscosity, rather than rip out the underlying strategy. The lawsuits say the same thing with less polite language. Complaints argue that GM knew about the defects, calculated how many failures might show up in warranty, and decided they could live with the fallout. The people who couldn't live with it were the ones stuck on the side of the road, wondering why their supposedly modern, smarter V8 died long before their old carbureted truck ever did. And when the problems became impossible to ignore, the official fix that followed felt less like an apology and more like damage control. For owners in the 6.2-liter recall, the process sounds reassuring on paper. Bring your truck in. The dealer performs a specific inspection. If your engine passes, you get to keep driving with updated oil specs and documentation that says you're good to go. If it fails, you get a replacement engine installed under the recall. But dig into the details, and you see why so many people don't feel safe just checking a box and moving on. There have already been multiple technical service bulletins tied to this engine family, some of them suggesting a move to heavier oil or revised maintenance notes as part of the solution. It becomes hard to tell whether your particular truck is truly fixed for life or just patched up enough to satisfy a line in a database. Owners of older AFM and DFM engines know that feeling all too well. Technical bulletins over the years have told dealers to replace lifters only if they can reproduce a failure. If a truck comes in with intermittent ticking but no current code, the answer might be no problem found. Another bulletin might describe replacing a small set of components while leaving the rest of a stressed, contaminated engine untouched. At the same time, internal notes and customer-facing language start using phrases like normal operating noise or expected oil consumption, even when the symptoms sound anything but normal to the person paying the note. From the outside, it feels less like a repair strategy and more like a containment strategy. Replace as few parts as possible. Limit how many vehicles qualify for big repairs. Frame red flag symptoms in the softest language possible. It's a playbook designed to protect the company, not the owner. So if the official plan doesn't really have your back, the next move has to come from you. And that's where this whole mess flips from pure frustration to potential leverage. The smartest owners watching this situation aren't just hoping their truck makes it. They're using the information to tilt the odds in their favor. Whether you're buying, selling, or keeping a GM V8, you can turn a design flaw into your negotiation edge. If you're shopping for one of these trucks, throw the old kicks the tires, checks the paint routine in the trash. Start with paperwork. Service history matters more than ever. Look for trucks with consistent oil changes, documented at reasonable intervals, not just giant gaps and vague invoices. Ask for inspection reports, especially any that mention compression tests or leak down numbers. If a seller can show clean oil analysis results, that's a huge sign they take maintenance seriously. Don't be afraid to say the quiet part out loud at a dealership. These engines have known issues. I'm willing to buy, but only at a price that reflects the risk. When a salesperson realizes you know exactly which engine code is under the hood and which recall or lawsuit it appears in, the conversation changes. You're no longer just another customer. You're the person they can't easily bluff. If you're selling, honesty isn't just a moral choice. It's a strategy. Lay out your maintenance records. Show your oil receipts. Note any preventive work you've done. Price the truck realistically, knowing the stigma is already built into the market. You might get less than you wish it was worth, but you'll move it faster and with fewer surprises. If you're keeping the truck, which many people will, because replacing a $70,000 vehicle isn't realistic just because the internet is nervous, your goal is simple. Stack the odds in your favor and build a paper trail. Forget the optimistic oil life monitor on the dash. Change the oil earlier, not later. Use a proper spec oil, and consider more robust options if your climate or usage is harsh. Give the truck real highway runs instead of endless short errands. Listen at a cold start with the hood open once in a while. A brief tick that fades might be an early-stage lifter bleed down. A persistent rattle or misfire is a big red flag. And document everything. Keep a folder or a binder with dates, mileage, and receipts. Snap photos of odometer readings at each service. If the worst happens later, whether that's a failure, a recall, or a buyback discussion, those records can be the difference between sorry, out of luck, and we'll work with you. Some owners go even further, exploring AFM/DFM management strategies where local laws and warranty status allow it, reducing how often the system cycles to limit wear. Others send periodic oil samples to labs to catch bearing material or fuel dilution before it becomes catastrophic. It might sound obsessive, but on an engine family with this much baggage, it's just smart insurance. At this point, you might be tempted to chalk this up as a uniquely GM-shaped disaster. But if you look around the industry, the pattern starts to feel uncomfortably familiar. Other manufacturers chase the same magic formula, use clever tricks to make big engines look cleaner and more efficient on paper without reinventing the wheel. That's how we ended up with Turbo V6s that stretch timing chains, valve trains that complain when deactivation kicks in, and emission systems that clog themselves into limp mode. Different brands, different logos, same high-stakes gamble. Balance regulators, marketing, and cost spreadsheets first. And hope durability doesn't scream too loudly. The difference with GM's 6.2-liter recall is that the screaming finally reached the point where regulators couldn't ignore it. Investigations have been expanded. Engine-bearing failures and internal wear are being tracked in official databases, not just on forums. Crash and fire reports are being tied back to engine defects. This isn't just an enthusiast rumor anymore. It's a matter of safety documents and government filings. The big automakers see that writing on the wall. Quietly, you can already spot the pivot. Some are bringing back simpler, naturally aspirated engines with fewer tricks. Others are committing to hybrid systems where an electric motor helps meet fuel economy targets instead of beating the mechanical life out of the engine with constant on-off games. Strangely, the pain GM owners are feeling right now might be the pressure that pushes the whole industry back toward powertrains built for the long haul instead of just the lab cycle. So what do you do today if you're sitting on one of these trucks? First, breathe. Panic doesn't fix anything. Positioning does. Check your VIN against official recall lookup tools and your brand's owner site or app. If your truck is part of the 6.2-liter recall, get the inspection done and keep copies of everything. If it's not, but you're in one of the AFM/DFM years, assume you're dealing with a higher risk engine and act accordingly. Schedule an oil change sooner rather than later. especially if you can't remember the last one or you've been trusting the optimistic dashboard reminder. Ask your shop about pulling an oil sample for lab analysis or running a compression test if you're approaching that 75,000 or 100,000 mile threshold. Start that maintenance log, dates, mileage, what was done, and by whom. If the truck ever ends up in a negotiation, whether that's a trade-in, a buyback discussion, or a goodwill repair request, that log becomes your evidence. Second, get honest with yourself about your timeline. If you were already thinking about trading out in the next year or two, you might not want to wait until the market fully internalizes the long-term risk. The more stories surface, the more recalls expand, and the harder it will be to get a strong number. If you plan to keep the truck for the long haul, switch your mindset from, "I hope nothing happens," to, "I'm going to make this as durable as possible and be ready if something does." Third, plug into the community. Owner forums, recall trackers, and transparent data-driven channels are invaluable. They'll often surface patterns long before official documents do. If other owners with your exact engine code and build window are seeing specific failures, you'll want to know sooner, not later. Because in the end, this story isn't just about broken parts, it's about broken trust. For decades, a GM V8 meant something more than just horsepower. It meant tradition. It meant that familiar rumble at idle, that sense that no matter what new tech showed up, the heart of the truck was something proven. That's why so many people stayed loyal through redesigns, new body styles, and changing badges. They believed the engine would outlast everything else. When you find out that the engine you counted on might have been built on a series of quiet compromises, the disappointment goes deeper than a repair bill. It feels like a personal betrayal, especially if you're not treating your truck like a toy, but like a tool. Hauling equipment, pulling campers, running a business, moving your family. But that betrayal doesn't have to end with you stuck holding the bag. The recall, the investigations, the lawsuits, and the owner stories piling up online all point to the same conclusion. This problem is real, it's widespread, and it is not your fault. The companies involved can spin, delay, or minimize. They can hide behind euphemisms like characteristic noise and expected consumption. What they can't do, not anymore, is pretend nobody noticed. So if this video helped you connect the dots, do something with it. Drop your truck's year and engine in the comments. Share what symptoms you've seen, what fixes worked, and what didn't. Check your VIN. Start the maintenance log. Ask harder questions at the service desk. Because the more owners speak up, the harder it becomes for anyone to call this normal. They built this mess on silence. We can end it with information. If you want to protect your wallet before the next surprise letter shows up in your mailbox, hit subscribe. Every week, we dig into the problems automakers hope you never read past the headline for. This time, the warning isn't coming from a buried memo or a technical bulletin. This time, it's coming from us.